Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. As promised, this is my third video, and I'm so glad that you can join us. Thank you for all the Facebook fans. Thank you for all the guys that have watched our videos on YouTube. We really appreciate your support. This is really something dear to my heart, given that I've suffered from this for close to 2 decades now. So I really feel everybody's pain. I really wanted to discuss in this episode about, although accidentally I had mentioned in the on the Facebook page about, I think, patience and anxiety. It's not about patience, although patience is interesting, but that's a whole nother subject. Is really anticipation and anxiety. And what I am going to be discussing is anticipatory anxiety alone. So for all of you that have experienced anticipatory anxiety, and for those of you that are not familiar with it, probably have experience, just don't know what it is. Anticipatory anxiety is basically anticipating the fear or anticipating the anxiety that you will be having from that social situation, or from that social setting, or from a setting, or from something that you need to do, etc., in your life. We find that the most anxious time of the year is usually during the holiday season, and that's because there's so much pent up expectations during that time of year that even people without generalizing anxiety disorder are usually people that suffer from anxiety, just because of the expectations. And so sad because the expectations are what cause the anxiety. If we can just drop the expectations and just be happy within and just love ourselves for who we are, we'd be in a better place. So, just to break down anticipatory anxiety, what is anticipatory anxiety? It's basically us looking at a situation, knowing that we're going to have to go to the doctor, for example, or that we made a reservation in 3 weeks from now to go to a restaurant, a social setting, or whatever, be something of the sort. And from the time from that moment that you had created this event in your life, which you're not really comfortable with, from that moment till you reach it, you will be having anxiety. And even at that moment, if you do actually end up showing up, because most people tend to give up at that point, but if, let's say, you had the courage and you did it, great for you. But at some point, you'll probably have anxiety, and that's how vicious anticipatory anxiety is. It really knows how to work you. But really, what is it that we're fearing? It's the fear itself that we're fearing. It's the fear of knowing. I told you that I'd be discussing Kyle Cease in this video. Well, here's a perfect Kyle Cease quote. I think he asked when I went to his off Broadway show. He says, "What is the hardest? What would you think the hardest time for a skydiver, or the most anxious time for a skydiver would be?" Right. So obviously, most people would think, jumping out of the plane. And it's true. That is the most anxious time, is while you're jumping out of the plane. I had actually asked people, when do you think that skydivers, I'm talking about trained skydivers, have anxiety? And they've all answered the same question: when they have to jump off the plane. Now it's interesting that you think that, but if you really think, does that make sense? That you would have to that you would have the most anxiety when you have to jump out of the plane? Wouldn't it make more sense to actually have jumped out of the plane, and that's when you're having your anxiety? I mean, you're 50,000 feet in, or whatever, 30. I don't know how high you have to be, but you're 30,000 feet in the air, and you're not having a panic attack. But no, I was more anxious when I had to jump off and step off out of the plane. It's amazing how it's brilliant if you can appreciate how wonderful and how creative your mind is, that it gets anxious over just the fear itself. We have to start learning to love the fear. If you can convince yourself the next time you create a deadline and just continue to say, and this is something else again that I learned from Kyle, but I also had a different form of it before Kyle, is if you can convince yourself, let's say in 3 weeks from now you have to go see the in-laws, and that's always been a social setting that you don't enjoy and creates a lot of anxiety, and many times you end up backing out. if you can convince yourself, I love it. I love that. I do. And really not convince yourself, say it. Say it, because when you say it, you're internalizing it and it comes out. And if you start asking, but what happens if I have anxiety? I love that too. Just love it. Just accept it. Let your body accept it. If you can allow your body to accept it, just like those skydivers that jumped into the fear, and now when they should be at most fear, are actually in a euphoric mode, because now they're in skydive mode. They're enjoying. They've gotten over their fear. They've accepted their fear. They've gotten over their fear. They've taken the leap, and they now are experiencing a beautiful and euphoric part, and that's the same thing that you'll experience. And one of the tools that I would use, which is funny because Kyle also has a version of it. I never saw it like that, and I think it's brilliant. It's called the Caligo. But I used to, when I would have an event that I would have to be going to, I would think of that event usually, and in my mind vision it. I wouldn't speak it out loud, but in my mind I would envision me being there, and enjoying myself, and having a few drinks with the buddies, and just really being cool about it, and find things in my mind that would make it fun for me. And in essence, that in itself would really create this euphoric feeling, so that when I actually went, I actually was able to enjoy myself. And Kylie goes a little bit different. This is where you speak it out as if you're bringing the future into the present, and you've already experienced it, which is an amazing thing. And we'll get into that in a different episode. But when you bring the future and you make it into the present, and you're talking about the future in presence, um, then you yourself will notice that you'll have such a relaxing and enjoyable time when you're going through it. So I don't know if I really gave you enough information about it. I really hope I helped some. If you have questions, I'm sure there will be many questions. Please go to the anxietybusters@gmail.com, and please write to us. And again, I will be making videos. I did mention that I wanted to mention some things about Kyle. I brought in a couple of interesting topics that he brings up. But every video that I'm going to be doing from Kyle from now on, it's going to be a separate video. It's going to be on a one-liner that he brings up and discussing it. And it's amazing, and it's going to really be the aha moments that I pulled out and that you're going to enjoy. They're going to be, I don't know, 3-minute segments, 5-minute segments. So please enjoy them. Thank you so much for joining us. Love you all. Stay true to yourself. Don't worry, you can get through this. If I'm getting through it and I've gotten through it, you can get through it. And it's only you are your worst enemy when it comes to anxiety. But know that you can get through it, and that there's help here. There's help there. It's just you need to accept yourself. You need to love yourself. And it's one of my mantras is I can learn to accept, respect, and love myself. I love you all. Thank you for joining us.